My name is Finn. I'm 24, living in the sleepy suburbs of Portland, Oregon, in a quiet town where the sun always seems to linger just a little too low on the horizon. I work part-time in a tiny phone repair shop, squeezed between a laundromat and a corner diner that reeks of burnt coffee. It's not glamorous. Cracked screens, waterlogged iPhones, and the occasional customer swearing up and down that they didn't drop their phone even when the case looks like a botched jigsaw puzzle. But it covers the rent on my cramped studio apartment, puts gas in my battered old 2009 Ford pickup, and leaves enough for a beer with the guys on weekends. Life simple, predictable, and that suits me just fine. I've never been the type to hatch big schemes or chase some grand destiny. Maybe that's why I dropped out after one semester of college. Too many assignments, not enough meaning. Most days blur into one another. I roll out of bed, pull on a faded old t-shirt and jeans, tinker with gadgets until my hands ache, then crash on the couch with a video game or some tunes. Classic rock's my jam. Springsteen, Zeppelin, those raw sounds my dad used to spin on his ancient turntable before he moved clear across the country. I don't go out much. A few flings here and there, but nothing serious. Girls my age always want something more structured. Me? I'm not the guy with a 5-year plan or an Instagram that blows up. I'm just Finn, the dude who swaps out a phone battery in under 5 minutes and savors the quiet. That's when I met Drew at the shop. He's 22, a newbie working weekends to cover tuition at the community college. We clicked right away. Same sense of humor, same taste in music. He's got this loud, unfiltered laugh, and he blurts out whatever pops into his head, which makes him lousy with grumpy customers, but perfect for killing time between fixes. During slow hours, we'd debate Aerosmith, the old tracks versus the newer ones, or swap dumb stories from our teen years. One Saturday, he looked up from a shattered Samsung and said, "Hey, come over tonight. Got the new Call of Duty, and my mom's making tacos. You in?" I had nothing going on, so I shrugged. "Yeah, man, text me the address." That's how I ended up at Drew's place. A charming 2-story house in a postcard-perfect neighborhood. White picket fences, manicured lawns, and an American flag fluttering lazily on the front porch. The kind of spot where folks still wave from their driveways, and kids bike around until the streetlights flicker on. Drew met me at the door in socks and a threadbare Nirvana tee, already midway through a rant about some prof he hated. "Come on in, dude," he said, waving me inside like I'd been there 100 times. The living room felt cozy. Hardwood floors, a worn leather couch, flat-screen TV hooked to a console. The air carried cumin and grilled peppers from the kitchen. I was about to flop onto the couch when she walked in. Lila, Drew's mom, and honestly, I wasn't ready for her. She didn't fit the mom stereotype at all. Her chestnut waves were pulled into a loose ponytail, a few strands framing her face. She wore jeans and a plain white t-shirt. Nothing flashy, but the way she moved with that effortless confidence, like she didn't need to try hit me hard. She looked barely 30, though I figured she had to be older to have a son Drew's age. There was a quiet self-assurance about her, like she knew herself inside out and had nothing left to prove. "Hi, you must be Finn," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel as she stepped out of the kitchen. Her voice was warm, steady, laced with a hint of a smile that tied my stomach in knots. "Drew's told me about you. Welcome." Yeah. "Hi," I stammered, feeling foolish as the words tangled. "Thanks for having me." She tilted her head, her smile widening just a touch. "No, ma'am. Okay? Just Lila." She glanced at Drew, who was already fiddling with his controller, and added, "This one's been talking your ear off. Says you're the only guy at work who doesn't drive him nuts." Drew groaned without looking up. "Mom, please. No embarrassing me in front of my buddy." Lila laughed, a soft, room-filling sound. "I'm just being nice," she shot back, tossing him a playful look before turning to me. "Tacos are almost ready. Hope you're hungry." I nodded, still reeling from her entrance. We settled in the living room, Drew and me on the couch, controllers in hand, blasting through rounds of Call of Duty. The game blared. Drew even louder, yelling at the screen every time he got sniped. I was half laughing at one of his rants about campers when I glanced toward the kitchen. Lila leaned against the counter, chopping with fluid precision. For a moment, I forgot where I was, caught by her silhouette. Then Drew elbowed me. "Hey, Focus up, man. You're getting us killed. I snapped back to the game, but my head wasn't in it anymore. Maybe it was the light playing over her, or the easy way she owned her space. Either way, I couldn't stop stealing glances. At a break, Drew bolted to the bathroom, leaving me alone on the couch. I was scrolling my phone when Lila called from the kitchen. "Boys? Water? Soda?" "We're good," I replied, looking up. Our eyes met a beat too long. I don't know what got into me. Maybe the beers we'd cracked open. Maybe I was just an idiot. But I chuckled under my breath and said it loud enough for Drew to hear if he were there, but not seriously. "Dude, your mom's hotter than any girl I've ever dated." The second the words left my mouth, I froze. Drew snickered from the hallway, chucking his controller at me. "Asshole, shut up." But then I saw her standing at the kitchen's edge, knife still in hand from chopping cilantro. She'd heard. Her eyes locked on mine. Not angry, not embarrassed. Just calm, like she was sizing me up. Then the corner of her mouth quirked into a smile. Not big, but enough to flip my stomach. She said nothing, just went back to chopping. But that look stuck with me. It wasn't disapproval. It was something else. Something that felt like stepping into a game without knowing the rules. I couldn't shake that moment from my head, the one in Drew's kitchen. Those slipped words, her smile, that gaze like she'd truly heard me without offense. It shouldn't have mattered. Just a dumb, half-buzzed joke to crack up a friend. But it looped in my brain as I drove home, the Portland suburbs blurring under my truck's headlights. I told myself to drop it. She was Drew's mom. Off limits. End of story. But that smile made turning the page tough. The days at the shop rolled on like usual. Shattered screens, endless client pings about unsaved data. Drew griping about his math prof while we swapped a battery. I waited for him to bring up what I'd said, maybe rib me about it, but nothing. Either he'd forgotten, or it wasn't worth it. I wasn't bringing it up either. Still, every phone buzz had me half hoping for a text about that night. None came. Then it hit. Lounging on my couch, scrolling Instagram, a notification popped. "Lila follows you." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over her profile. Her cover photo was simple. A candid shot of her on a park bench, sunlight filtering through her wavy chestnut hair, coffee mug in hand. No filters, no glamour, just her. I clicked through a few posts, garden snaps, a stack of books on a table, a sunset over the Willamette River. Everyday stuff, but it felt like peeking into her world. Then I saw she'd liked an old post of mine, a blurry shot from last summer. Me on Cannon Beach, grinning like an idiot with sand caked on my face. No one digs that deep without intent. My heart did a weird flip. I followed back, telling myself it was polite, but my palms were sweaty hitting the button. Work kept me busy, but my thoughts drifted to her. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before, like scanning the shop parking lot for a familiar car, hoping she'd swing by for Drew. She didn't. Come Friday. I'd convinced myself I was overthinking it. Then Drew texted, "Come over tomorrow. Mom's doing lasagna. You down?" My gut twisted, not for the food. I typed fast, "Hell yeah," and spent the rest of the evening wondering if I'd catch that smile again. Saturday night, I pulled up to Drew's, the same cozy two-story with the flag out front. I'd swapped my usual tee for a clean black button-down, which felt ridiculous the second I stepped out. Drew flung the door open, mid-story about some college guy bombing an exam spectacularly. "Get in here. Dinner's ready," he said, dragging me inside. The smell hit first. Garlic, tomato sauce, melted cheese, thick and comforting in the air. Lila was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. She looked up as we entered, and there it was, that casual poise. Jeans again, a thin gray t-shirt, apron tied loosely at her waist. Her hair was down this time, curling just past her shoulders. "Finn, good to see you again," she said, her voice warm with a teasing edge, like she was testing me. "Hope you're ready for these lasagna." I went for it. "Smells like I'd better be," I shot back, aiming for cool. Drew was already grabbing plates, oblivious to my racing pulse. We sat at the dining table, a small wooden one with a vase of wildflowers in the center. Drew dominated the talk through dinner, venting about work, school, some hot new game. I nodded along, but my eyes kept drifting to Lila. She laughed at Drew's tales, tossed in comments here and there, But every so often, she'd catch my gaze, not lingering just enough to feel it, like we shared a secret no one else in the room could touch. Afterward, Drew got a call from a buddy and bolted upstairs to take it. I offered to clear the table, mostly because sitting felt awkward. Lila handed me a sponge and nodded at a stack of plates by the sink. "You sure you know how to use that?" she teased, leaning on the counter as I started scrubbing. "I'm a pro," I fired back, flicking a splash of water her way. She laughed, swatting me with the towel. The kitchen was tight, and we were closer than we needed to be. The air felt thicker, like it was holding its breath. I focused on the plates, trying not to notice how her arm brushed mine when she reached for a glass. Then she spoke, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You know what you said last time? About me being prettier than the girls you've dated?" I froze, sponge dripping, face burning. "Yeah, sorry. Wasn't meant to say it out loud." She turned to me, eyes steady, searching. "No need to apologize. It's been a while since anyone said something like that and meant it." She paused, tucking a strand behind her ear. "Most people don't notice me anymore. Not like that." I swallowed, throat dry. "Yeah, hard to buy. You're not exactly invisible." Her lips curved into that gut-twisting smile. "You'd be surprised," she said softly. "But you looked right at me, like you saw something." Before I could reply, Drew's heavy footsteps thumped down the stairs. Lila stepped back, grabbing a plate like nothing happened. I went back to scrubbing, heart pounding so loud I swore she heard it. Drew burst in, clueless, yapping about a party he was thinking of hitting later. I nodded, barely listening, still hooked on her words. As I headed out, Lila walked me to the door while Drew grabbed his jacket. She leaned in just a fraction, voice barely there. "Thanks for coming, Finn, and for what you said. It stuck with me." I managed a nod, mouth too dry to speak. Driving home, her voice echoed in my head. That look, that moment, it wasn't in my imagination. She'd felt it too. And for the first time in ages, I had no clue what came next. That kitchen moment with Lila wouldn't leave me. Her words, the way she'd leaned in, her eyes piercing like she could read my soul, it was all I could think about. Work blurred into a haze of cracked screens and Drew's endless chatter, but my mind wandered elsewhere. I replayed that whisper. It stuck with me. I wasn't imagining things. There was something real brewing. But it felt like teetering on a cliff's edge, thrilling, sure, but one slip and I was done for. She was Drew's mom. Older, wiser, way out of my league in ways I couldn't even name. And yet, she'd looked at me like I was more than the guy fixing phones next to her son. A week slipped by with no word. No texts, no Instagram, likes nothing. I told myself it was for the best. Maybe I'd read too much into it. Maybe she was just being kind, stringing me along. But on a quiet Thursday afternoon, munching a sandwich in the back room, my phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "If you're free tonight, I'm brewing tea. Drew's out with friends. Want to swing by?" My heart did its stupid leap. I stared at the screen, thumb raised, debating cool detachment versus honesty. I went honest. "Yeah, I'm there. What time?" Her reply zipped back. 6:30. Doors open. I pulled up as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange over Portland's tidy neighborhoods. The flag on the porch waved in the breeze, and the air held a faint scent of fresh-cut grass from next door. I parked, took a deep breath, and walked the path. The door was unlocked, as promised. I stepped in, calling softly, "Lila, it's Finn." In here, her voice floated from the living room. I found her on the couch, barefoot in a long beige sweater and leggings. No makeup, hair loose, and a bit tousled like she'd run her fingers through it. She cradled a mug of tea. Another waited for me on the coffee table. The room was warm, lit by a corner lamp, with soft acoustic music humming from a speaker. Without Drew, everything felt different. Calmer. More intimate. "Thanks for coming," she said, smiling as she patted the spot beside her. "Sit. Chamomile tea. You good?" "Perfect," I said, settling across from her, awkward with the mug in my hands. I wasn't used to this, sitting in a living room where every word felt loaded. We chatted lightly at first. She asked about the shop, laughed when I told her about a customer trying to trade a busted phone for a half-eaten pizza slice. I asked about her work. Freelance graphic design for small businesses. "Keeps me busy," she said, "but it's flexible. Leaves time for Drew. The talk deepened. She shared about life before Portland, growing up in a tiny coastal town up near Astoria. Married young, thinking it'd last forever. It didn't, she said, voice steady but gentle. He'd bailed when Drew was 5. Said family life wasn't for him. She shrugged like it was just fact, but I saw the weight in her eyes. Haven't dated much since. Too wrapped up in raising a kid, I guess. Or maybe I stopped believing anyone would stick around. I nodded, unsure what to say. That's tough, but you seem to have handled it all. She laughed, a touch bitter. Appearances can lie, Finn. Some days I feel invisible. Just Drew's mom or the lady cranking out logos, not me, you know? I set my mug down, leaning forward. You're not invisible. Not to me. The words tumbled out raw, honest. Her eyes met mine, and for a second the room shrank, the air thickening. She didn't look away. You really meant it last time, didn't you? She murmured. About me being prettier than girls your age. My throat tightened, but I held her gaze. Yeah, I did. And I still do. She smiled, not her teasing one, but softer, almost vulnerable. Takes guts to say that. Most guys wouldn't dare. Not to someone like me. Someone like you? I shook my head. Lila, you're not like anyone else. You walk into a room, and everything fades. Her lips parted, like she was searching for words. Then she set her mug aside and leaned closer, elbow on the couch. Careful, Finn. Keep that up, and I might believe you. Maybe you should, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Our knees nearly touched, and I caught the faint lavender from her sweater. The music faded, or maybe I stopped hearing it. We sat in silence a long while, just there, letting the quiet say what words couldn't. The next weekend, Drew invited me for dinner again. Lasagna, like before. I showed up casual, but every glance from Lila felt like we were carrying a secret. Drew was his usual loud self, rambling about a concert he wanted to catch, but I barely followed. Lila was quieter than usual, but her eyes found mine across the table. When Drew got up for more soda, she leaned to clear a plate and whispered so only I could hear, "You make it hard to focus, you know." I grinned, heart racing. Good. You don't make it easy either. She chuckled, her fingers grazing mine as she took my plate. Quick, subtle, but it lit me up. Later, when Drew headed upstairs for a call, I helped in the kitchen again. This time, it wasn't just dishes. We stood close, shoulders brushing, and she didn't pull away. "Your trouble," she said, half laughing, but her eyes serious. "Only if you want me to be," I replied. She didn't answer, just looked at me, and I felt the question hanging. What were we doing? Where was this going? I had no answers, but I didn't want to leave. A few days later, another text. "Drew's out tonight. Dinner at 7, just us." I was at her door by 6:55, palms damp as I knocked. She opened in an oversized sweater and jeans, hair down, no fuss. "No need to knock," she said, stepping aside. "Just come in." We ate pasta simple, perfect with a glass of red wine each. Talk flowed, music, movies, her backpacking days through Europe in her 20s. I confessed my college flop, how I still didn't know what I wanted from life. She listened, really listened, like every word mattered. After, we sank onto the couch, plates forgotten in the sink. She sat close, knee against mine. "Finn," she said, voice soft but firm. "You make me feel seen, like I'm more than just a mom." "You are," I replied, my hand finding hers. Her fingers were warm, and she didn't pull back. "You're off limits, and I can't stop thinking about you." She searched my face, like deciding something. Then she leaned in a fraction, and I met her halfway. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, just a suspended breath where the world stopped, and it was only us. "Stay," she whispered, so quiet. "No need to go, not tonight." I stayed. We didn't rush. We just lingered in that quiet space, hands linked, the weight of it all settling in. It wasn't about what came next. It was about choosing to be there together in that exact moment. After that night, everything shifted. Not loud or obvious, but like the air itself had changed. Lila and I didn't talk about what happened on her couch. No labels, no promises, pointless. We'd crossed an invisible line. And now, We lived in this secret, serene space that was ours alone. I'd drive home windows down, cool Portland night air on my skin, her lavender scent clinging to my shirt. Lying on my couch, I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying her hand in mine, the way my name softened on her lips. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It ran deeper, something I couldn't quite name. We played it careful, measured. No texts unless we knew Drew was off his phone. No late calls or risky DMs. Just quick, vague messages that could fly under radar. Dinner tomorrow, Drew's out, or stop by if you're free. I'd show when Drew was at school or with friends. The flag on the porch waving like a silent all clear. She'd open the door, makeup free, hair loose, in simple sweater and jeans. And every time, it stole my breath. It wasn't just her looks. It was how she made me feel. Valued. Chosen to step into her world. Our evenings were stolen, serene. We'd cook together spaghetti or grilled cheese, laughing when I scorched the bread or she splattered sauce on the counter. We'd curl on the couch, sharing cheap red wine, talking everything and nothing. She'd share her college days, how she'd dreamed of being an artist before life steered her to design. I'd open up about my dad, how he'd left when I was a kid, and how I'd spent years proving I didn't need him. She listened, eyes locked, no judgment. Sometimes we'd watch old movies, her picks, often something like The Goonies, and she'd rest her head on my shoulder, fingers tracing mine. It felt so natural, so right, like we'd always done this. But underneath ran that undercurrent. We were hiding it all from the world, from Drew. I started noticing details about her I'd missed before. The way she'd hum softly while chopping veggies, a tune I didn't know. How her laugh caught in her throat when I teased her rotten taste in reality TV. How she'd pause mid-sentence sometimes, looking at me like she wanted to etch the moment. I was falling hard, scared as hell, but exhilarated too. She was Drew's mom. Older. With a whole life I couldn't fully grasp. Years of heartbreak. Raising a boy alone. Building a world that hadn't included me until now. What the hell were we doing? I didn't know. But I couldn't stop. A month in, things got dicey. Drew started acting off at work. Still his loud, joking self, but I'd catch him watching me, like he was piecing together a puzzle. One day, closing up shop, he tossed me a phone case and said, "You're over at the house a lot lately, huh?" His tone was casual, but not his eyes. I shrugged, keeping it neutral. "Yeah, your mom's cooking beats my microwave meals. What can I say?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his face. "She's been weird lately. Happier, I think. Smiling more. Even pulling out those old records she played when I was a kid." He paused, wiping the counter. "You notice anything?" My stomach nodded, but I forced a grin. "Like I said, her lasagna's worth the drive. Probably just in a good mood." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't sold. I drove home that night with a pit in my gut. Drew was my buddy, the guy I'd killed hours with, swapping stories, gaming. If he found out, what would he think? Hate me? Feel betrayed? No answers, but the thought of losing him or her gripped the wheel tighter. Next time at her place, I brought it up. Late night, Drew was at a friend's. We sat at her kitchen table, half a pizza box between us. The room smelled of pepperoni and the faint cedar from her candles. I set my slice down and looked at her. "Lila, what if Drew figures it out? Us?" Her face softened, but worry shadowed her eyes. She leaned back, twisting a strand around her finger. "I think about it constantly," she said quietly. "He's my son. I'd burn the world down to protect him." She gestured between us, voice fading. "But this isn't just a fling, Finn. Not for me." "Not for me either," I said, voice rougher than I meant. "But he's my friend. If he knew, it could wreck everything." She nodded, lips tight. "I know. That's why we're careful. No texts he might see, no visits when he's around." But she reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. "It's been years since I felt this alive. You make me feel like I'm not just on autopilot, like I'm still here, still me." I took her hand, her skin warm against mine. "You're more than here, Lila. You're everything." The words hung huge in the small kitchen, but they were true. She smiled, that soft, vulnerable one that squeezed my chest. We didn't solve it that night. No plan, no lines drawn. We just kept on, stealing moments when we could. A dinner here, a movie there, a quiet walk in her neighborhood when the streets emptied. Each time I left, I'd glance back at the porch light, the flag waving, feeling like I left a piece of myself behind. But I felt fuller too, like she'd given me something I didn't know I needed. One night, it nearly blew up. I'd swung by to drop off a controller Drew left at the shop. Lila opened the door, hair damp from a shower, in an oversized tee and sweats. She smiled, stepping aside. "Drew's not back yet," she whispered. "Stay a bit." I shouldn't have. Drew said he'd be home early. But I went in anyway, and we ended up on the couch, her head on my chest, my arm around her. The TV droned some old sitcom. Neither of us watched. Then the front door. Drew's voice, "Mom? You home?" I bolted upright, heart in my throat. Lila grabbed my hand, eyes calm but urgent. "Back door," she hissed, nodding to the kitchen. I slipped out just as his footsteps hit the living room, pulse hammering like a drum while I crouched in the yard. Night air slapping my face. I hid behind the fence, eavesdropping through an open window. Drew's voice casual, oblivious. "You okay, Mom? You look kind of flushed." I walked home that night, hands shaking. We'd been careful, but not enough. And yet, even with the fear, I knew I'd go back. Because whatever this was with Lila, it was worth the risk. It had to be. Those close calls with Drew didn't stop us. They sharpened us, made us hyper-aware of the edges we danced on. Lila and I kept our moments tucked away, hidden in the quiet corners of her house or on late-night drives when Portland's streets lay empty. We didn't talk future, no plans or vows. That wasn't the point. It was her laugh when I ribbed her about cheesy rom-coms or how she'd rest her hand on my arm mid-conversation, like checking I was real. Each goodbye, porch light glowing behind me, brought that odd mix of peace and ache, like I was exactly where I belonged, but only for now. Weeks blurred into months, our rhythm settling in. I'd arrive when Drew was gone. The porch flagged my silent signal it was safe. We'd cook, watch movies, or just sink into the couch, her feet tucked under, my arm over her shoulders. She'd share stories from her life, dreaming of New York in her 20s, learning to be mom and breadwinner overnight after her ex split. I'd talk my small dreams like opening my own shop someday, or just finding a spot where I fit. She listened, eyes steady, dropping lines like, "You're already more than you think, Finn." Those words stuck, heavier than they should. Drew's suspicions lingered, even unspoken. I felt it in how he'd eye me at work. Sharper jokes, probing questions. One afternoon closing shop, he lobbed a charger my way and said, "You're over a lot, huh? Mom's food that good?" His grin was there, but his gaze probed for cracks. I laughed it off, gut twisting. "Man, you know her lasagna's worth it." He nodded, but the air crackled like he was fitting puzzle pieces. That night, I raised it with Lila. We were in the kitchen, garlic bread scent lingering from dinner. She wiped the counter, hair tied back, sweater slipping off one shoulder. I leaned on the fridge, voice low. Drew's catching on. "He's not dumb. What if he puts it together?" She paused, hands on the counter. For a beat, silence. Then she met my eyes, soft, but resolute. "I think about it every day," she said. "He's my son. I'd set the world on fire for him." "But you?" She stepped closer, fingers grazing mine. "You've given me back something I thought was gone. A piece of me I didn't even know was missing." I took her hand, thumb tracing her knuckles. "I don't want to ruin things for you or him, but I don't want to stop either." She nodded, lips pressed. "Me neither. So we keep going careful because it's real, Finn. Even if it's quiet, that was enough. No need to label it. No need to shout it. It was ours, and that mattered." We held our routine. Dinners when Drew vanished, late talks on her porch, her head on my shoulder as crickets hummed outside. I noticed shifts in her subtle ones. She smiled more, not just with me, but in general. Drew mentioned it once, offhand, while we fixed a phone at the shop. "Mom's weirdly chipper lately," he said, half joking, half curious, humming all the time. "It's freaking me out." I smiled, heart pounding, voice even. "Maybe she's just got good taste in music." He laughed, and for a second, I thought we were clear. but I knew secrets like this couldn't stay buried forever. Truth seeps like water from a cracked glass. Still, I wasn't ready to let go. Not her, not this. One evening, I dropped by unannounced. Drew was at a concert. I'd had a rotten day at the shop, a customer yelling over a fix I hadn't even touched. I just needed to see her. She opened the door, no makeup, hair in a loose bun, oversized tee, and sweats. She said nothing, just stepped aside. We didn't talk much that night. Sank onto the couch, her legs across my lap, a old Fleetwood Mac vinyl spinning softly. She studied my face, tracing its lines like memorizing. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, hand on her knee. "Just needed this. Needed you." She smiled that unguarded, heart-squeezing one. "You've got me," she said simply. And in that moment, I believed her. I don't know where this leads. Maybe nowhere. Maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe it's just these quiet nights, stolen glances, that door always open when I need it. Drew might figure it out someday, might hate me or not, but right now, Lila and I have this, and it's more than I ever dreamed. It's no fairy tale, no movie with a big finish. It's just us two people finding something real in a world that doesn't always let you hold it. And for now, that's enough. Goodbye. In the unlikeliest corners of our everyday lives, love slips in like sunlight, piercing storm clouds on a rainy afternoon, reminding us that the human heart is an endless mystery, bold enough to shatter conventions and buried fears. Take Finn's story, a young phone fixer with monotonous days, whose path crosses Lila's. A woman whose quiet grace lights up the shadows of a life shaped by trials, a broken marriage, the fierce glow of single motherhood. What starts as an awkward joke, a stolen glance in a cumin-scented kitchen, blooms into a fragile secret dance, each pilfered moment a heartbeat balanced on a knife's edge. Here's the gem this tale hands us. True love bows to no timelines of age or family ties. It teaches that vulnerability unlocks deep bonds, that being truly seen beyond the masks we wear is the greatest balm for a soul weary of fading into the background. Finn learns that risking friendship, judgment, for a forbidden spark is life's boldest honor, not in scaling noisy peaks, but in daring to whisper, "I see you," to the one who thought she'd vanished. And Lila? She rediscovers love isn't a relic of youth, but a rebirth, a nudge that our scarred hearts still pulse for the unforeseen. This lesson, laced with aching tenderness, bids us peer into our own quiet spaces. What if the love we dodge is the very one to make us whole? Let these words echo in you, like Fleetwood Mac on a Portland night. Share in the comments. What unexpected lesson has love taught you? Subscribe for more stories that stir the soul, and together, we'll unravel the heart's enigmas. Your voice matters, join us, and the journey goes on.